Jack, well done.
Thanks.
Wonderful, really wonderful. Congratulations. And sorry, and thank you. So, Francesco. Sì. So welcome, Francesco, who is also part of our Emerging Talents program, and someone having born in Italy and studied printmaking there, got your central cinema. I will give you a very brief introduction. But it is our pleasure to welcome you here. So thank you, Francesco, for joining us today. And may you introduce your work.
Yes, thanks so much.
Come on.
Thank you. Thank you, John. So I wanted to start my 15 minutes with a poem by Pasolini. You will excuse my diction and accent, but I'll try anyway. And I'm reading this poem because it's the first note. It's the first. It reminds me of the first time that when I studied in academy in Rome. It reminds me of the first time when I thought that that's my thing, and I wanted to be an artist after reading this poem. So I'm a force of the past. My love lies only in tradition. I come from the ruins, the churches, the altarpieces, the villages abandoned in the Apennines or the foothills of the Alps, where my brother once lived. I wander like a madman down the Tuscolana, down the Appia like a dog without a master. Or I see the twilights, the morning over Rome, the Ciociaria, the world, as the first act of post-history to which I bear witness, for the privilege of recording them from the outer edge of some buried age. Monstrous is the man born of a dead woman's womb. And I, fetus now grown, roam about more modern than any mother, in search of brothers no longer alive. And yeah, that was the first for me. It reminds me of the first time when, during the time in Rome, when I studied in the academy, I started to wander across the landscape and working outdoor, sketching from the landscape. They started to generate the first ideas, the first drawings, and the first paintings. So during the time, I spent lots of time taking notes, recording, and in a way understanding the world, understanding nature around me. And during the classes, in the same time, I work a lot with the figure. So I thought that for me was important to narrow down the interest, to narrow down the choices, and I started from that time to work exclusively on landscape, just because the landscape for me it was a way to. It allows me to use more marks and to be. I found more freedom in drawing on the landscape than the figure. Just because the figure has still central and important, but the figure has reminds me of the academic, of those years of academic rules and canons that I wanted to, in a way, overcome. And so those drawings are quite recent. I did those back in Italy during the pandemic, when I first rediscovered my home place, like a local landscape, something that it was familiar, but in a way new for me. And I started to work on composition, working with different mediums, and I always like to experiment with different supports. I like to try different techniques, different watercolors, and combine all the supplies in the experimentation, if you know what I mean. And so I started working on the landscape, trying to respond on that landscape, try to think about the light and, in a way, how the landscape is organized, and pulling out some elements of abstraction, I guess, out from that landscape. So those work, they were like quick in a way. They were like 4-hour sessions and made on observation, no? And yes, I enjoyed. I discovered during that time the pleasure of painting, and to be, and I felt part of a whole environment and part of a landscape, not part of something bigger. And in a way, it was easier. And for me, it's always natural to work when I am looking at something, when I am translating, transcribing some reading in the landscape, and I'm thinking about what to frame, what to select, what to draw. That's why I feel that I'm drawing with the brush. I feel that color it comes with, how can I say, like colors, it come after the drawing, but it comes in the same way. So I use the same hand. And I like to play with space and light, especially in this series of paintings that I've done in Italy. I like to play with what you can do really with oil. That was the point. And how you can translate that light, and how it's always a compromise, no? And I tried how to work with those limitations and with that compromise, using that compromise. After a while, I started to work more indoor in the studio, working from drawings, working from sketches, and the work became more imaginative. I use more my imaginary instead of trying to match the color or trying to capture the light. So I try to project into the painting my own imaginary and my own colors, and so there came out this series of um, works that, in a way, they are born outdoor, but they are revisited and reworked indoor. And I always like to play with this idea of exterior and interior in my practice. It's important. Um, Exterior, I mean, like the study, the observation is always fundamental, because it's a way to understand nature, and is a way to humble as well yourself and your practice. And as well, is important the part of working on the interior world, your own imaginary. And all the books, all the films that I've read, at the moment they became important, and they came out, and they show their nature. So as well, the nature of painting itself is really interesting to me. And recently I've been reading and painting and working on geology, and I started to investigate that particular subject in landscapes, always starting from observations, but then reworking them and rethinking them uh, from inside to out, from the structure of the paint and the land itself. Sometimes the work, I feel that I need to push it forward, and I feel that I need to experiment and to transform the shape in order to find something new. And it's always, for me, it's never linear, the process. I always, I'm always looking for something new, for something that I haven't achieved, haven't discovered yet. That's why it's fundamental for me to experiment with materials. I can see the point of repeating myself. I always like to push it and see what I can do and how I can manipulate colors and paint in a different way. And so from here, I started to work more onto my imaginary, onto my imagination, without observing and translating or responding, but trying to create my own world and my own land in a way. And it became more and more abstract, if you like. Um, so sometimes, it's always unpredictable. I don't know how the painting it will, or the drawing it will look like at the end. Sometimes the color is just suggesting me the next steps or what to do. So a surprise, and that's why I'm never bored, and I try to go at the studio every day, because it's always an element of surprise. Of course, with many disasters, with many dead ends. But then, yes, sometimes I like to manipulate the paint. I like to think what I can do now, how can I manipulate the oil paint and make it look like a watercolor. And I like to mix them, it's like an alchemic game for me. But when sometimes I feel the urgency of going back into the observation again. So I am going back when I'm stuck in the studio and don't know what to do. I'm going back to draw from real life, from my surroundings or from places that I visited, and that always helped me to keep my practice fresh and alive in a way. Those are works that I made a couple of years ago now during residency in Sicily, and all the colors there, all the colors of the Mediterranean, they really informed my work. And I took those. So those drawings were inspired by a picture of the slaughter of the tuna that is taking place in the west side of Italy um, every year. And I was thinking of composition and color, so using the subject, the picture, as a way to project my own imaginary again. And I've been there. I spent lots of time in the salt marshes, in the salt pans, thinking again, looking for, seeking the structure of the landscape and the color, and how I can pull out and extract some elements and play with the rhythm of and the morphology of the landscape. Yes. So this one is again an example of how the observation and the imagination went together, no? And so I'm using I'm trying to combine the elements of abstraction with elements of observations. And so there were as well paintings that I made during this residency in Sicily, around the salt marshes. So I was even in those. It was important for me the composition and how to respond quickly to an emotion. So it was important to be there and not to work from picture or from imagination at this time. And yes, so I like to work in a way. I like to paint and draw using the same energy, and I'm always thinking about how can how can my hand be connected with, how can my line be connected with my deeper emotions, and how, in a way, the brush or the point of the pencil will act like a seismograph, something which is recording emotions, no? And that's that happens when I am confronted to something, to a landscape or to a human being, and what is the product of this encounter is like a third identity, like a child generated by the observation. No, it's not a portrait of the palm or of someone. It's not my self-portrait, but it's something in between. It's our encounter. And so I did these drawings in the last residency in the Canary Islands, in Lanzarote. And after those line drawings, I came back to London and I started to experiment on different supports. Um, Obviously, the support, the surface, every surface will give you a different effect, no? And this time I experimented with on panel, on board, using black gesso, something very technical, but and working with this kind of limitation and with a limited palette, in a way it opens me new possibilities, and like I can generate 20 different versions out from here now. So for me, it's always good to work with limitations, because my practice is it can expand from printmaking, painting, watercolor. I'm in love with all those practice, but it's good sometimes to narrow down the choices. And those are drawings that I made in the residency in Lanzarote. Um, Again, they are quite quick, but I'm not sure if I can achieve the same immediacy, the same line working back to the studio. So sometimes I felt that the work that I made outdoor is just finished as it is, and there is no point to repeating it, translating it into a painting. And yes, I like to work with the reading quite quickly, without thinking too much. And it's a kind of improvisation, but it's a very focused improvisation. It's not like throwing marks away, but I'm following that line, and I'm always surprised of where this line is taking me, and it's always it's an endless source of surprises. And so those watercolors are from, again, this series of volcanoes and around geology that I've done in Lanzarote last winter. Yes, and those as well, they were done in Lanzarote from observation. And I'm trying to think about now in my work about the rhythm, how I can evoke in my work the rhythm of nature and without being descriptive. And so I am working quite quickly as well on canvas using, I like to mix media again. So this one is oil, oil pastel and oil paint on the top. And sometimes I like to keep it open um, to make it look more fresh. And I always interested in urgency in the work. So I guess the best works that I've done are always the one where I felt like a need that was pushing me to do it. And this one is something different that comes out from this series of rocks, which is a lithograph. Um, so now I'm experimenting with this media that I think it got lots of potential. for my work, because it's a bridge between painting and printmaking, which I love them both in the same way. So I think in the next year I will keep pushing in this direction and see where it will take me. All right, thanks so much. Okay. Thank you, John.
No, Francesco, thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
and also for that wonderful poem. It introduced it
Thank you.
beautifully by way of context.